We've hit the fourth round of the 2022 Fantasy Draft Rewind, and now it's starting to get really spicy with some interesting names that we got to keep our eyes on headed into this next year's draft. Thank you for joining us for the Thursday episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Let's get right to it.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, hockey heads, and welcome back to your source for off-season news from the fantasy lens. It's the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. I'm joined, as always, by my esteemed co-host, Mr. Steel Roden. Make sure you check out his work all across YouTube under NHL Quick Hits and all across the Locked On Fantasy Network. I'm your boy, Big Flip Livingstone. You've seen some of what I do over at Dauber Hockey, NHL.com, Sportsnet, and more. Make sure you continue to follow us all summer long. We'll be here to break down all the news, fantasy trends, and what you need to dominate that draft. And thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Steel, some of the newsreel has slowed down a little bit. We got some entry-level signings. We got some minor moves. We're not going to talk about that today yet until something really pops up. What we're going to continue to do, take a look at last year's fantasy hockey draft. This is how you're going to get better. Honestly, I've already seen some of my picks, Steel, upcoming, and I'm already learning. You've said a lot, and one of the things I'm already getting better at, wait to take goaltenders. Today's episode, a bunch of goaltenders start to fly off the board, and that's one of those things that happen in these drafts, right? A position starts to go, fantasy GMs start to follow, so we'll break it all down. Tristan Jarry, Darcy Kuemper, Evander Kane, and more. I'll turn it right over to you, though, Steel, and let's start. We're breaking down now the fourth round, back half of the fourth round and down. I'll turn it right over to you for one of the guys that you and I love to talk about.
We do love to talk about them. We love talking about his teammates as well. Roope Hintz coming in at 48th overall in our Locked On Fantasy Hockey League. And this is always a funny player for me to talk about because I've actually drafted this player multiple times over the last few seasons. And specifically 2 seasons ago when I drafted this player, I actually wanted to trade him almost immediately when the season started because he couldn't get off to a worse start than he did. Fair. Only had 1 point in the first 12 games of the season. Fair. 2 years ago. So it was really funny. I was going to all the guys and my friends in the league trying to do whatever possibly I could to get rid of Roope Hintz. And then he ended up finishing the year with 72 points in 80 games and then followed that up with a 75-point production year in 73 games. I didn't think he'd be able to do it again, but he went out there and did it. And, you know, we've talked a lot about his teammates. I believe in Jason Robertson. I believe in Miro Heiskanen. I believe in Jake Ottinger. And quite honestly, I'm starting to believe in the Dallas Stars, and that's very scary as a Minnesota Wild fan. So when I look at Roope Hintz and, you know, comparing where he was drafted in our league and what his ADP is. His ADP says 108.3, which is round 9. I think that's absolutely preposterous. Yes. I think he goes from the bottom of the 4th round to the top of the 4th round. I think exactly the perfect round for a guy like Roope Hintz is exactly where he is right now in the 4th round.
I agree. And actually, maybe even heading into this draft that we're talking about, maybe that was a little bit high for what we had seen point production wise, but not talent level wise. And we've also, you know, you've brought up a good point in the past about the chemistry that's going on with this top 6, top 9 forward group in Dallas. They seem to really like to play together. So one of the things that I'm intrigued the most about is seeing if Matt Duchene can fit in seamlessly. Because we saw Max Domi come in. We saw Mason Marchment come in even. He had his struggles, but then really gelled with this group. So I think at the end of the day, what I'm most intrigued by with this Roope Hintz situation, Steel, is rarely do we see a player have his coming out party in the postseason. This guy really stepped up and made a name for himself this past postseason. Did it work out for the Dallas Stars? No, but that had nothing to do with Roope Hintz. That game he scored a hattie, and it was at every single, you know, he had a power play goal, a penalty, a shorthandy, and a 5-on-5. I know that's just one of those things that you can really jazz up and kind of get caught up in the media moment. That's just downright impressive, dude. And to do it in the postseason, that was one of the things I looked at with Roope Hintz is maybe not enough people are giving this guy credit because of some of those slow starts he had, Steel. because I remember certain podcasts out there, not ours, thankfully, said drop Roope Hintz, get rid of him. At least you were trying to get some value for him. But at the end of the day, Roope Hintz is one of those guys who is under the radar as the next couple of stars in this game. And I don't mean Dallas stars, I mean superstars.
Yeah, and that playoff performance just put him above the top of what we thought we could expect from Roope Hintz. And again, playing with the guys that he's playing with, Pavelski, Jason Robertson, even Jamie Benn from time to time, Miro Heiskanen on the back end, that's obviously going to help your production, but he's a very skilled player, and he proved that this postseason. Deservingly so, deserves to go in the fourth round. A guy who probably shouldn't be going in the fourth round, though, Darcy Kuemper, 47th overall. And whoa, I think we saw the difference between a Stanley Cup caliber team and a wild card bubble team with Darcy Kuemper. A 921 save percentage, a 2.54 goals against average in 2021-22 season with Colorado, compared to his season with Washington, a 908 save percentage, a 287 goals against average in Washington in 2023. Played the same amount of games, played 57 games in both Colorado and Washington, but the win record was just very lopsided. Had a losing record this year with Washington. He was injured for a bit, and you honestly can't complain too much with the guy overall. Like, he got his Stanley Cup ring, he secured the bag. It is what it is. But when you speak it into ADP and draft position, I think 47 is too high. His ADP says 65.1, which that's even too high for me.
It's too high. Yeah,
it's too high. And again, this is the goal. It seems like a goalie episode. We had 4 goalies going. It is a goalie episode. And yeah, a guy like Darcy Kuemper, we've talked about this at length many times. Wait for your goaltenders. You can find them down even in the 10th, 11th, 12th round. We saw that last year with Vitek Vanacek and Linus Ullmark. So yeah, Darcy Kuemper, I'm fading him hard.
Do I think you're getting the Vezina Trophy winner this year as late as you got Linus Ullmark last year? I don't think so, but there's a few things I just got to pop off before I forget. First of all, the Washington Capitals are going to be in trouble in terms of getting wins. Yeah. Second of all, I don't actually hate their defensive group, Steele. Do I think he's still going to be, a peripheral number one in terms of where you draft him? And do I wholeheartedly agree at the fourth round? I don't know what was going on in this draft. And there's a few more goalies, and I'm a victim of it as well, that went far too high. So that is the main takeaway for this episode for sure. Wait for your draft pick for your goalies, unless it's maybe one of those couple of guys. And even then, I think you can still wait, Steele. But at the end of the day, Faravari, a full year of John Carlson again, Rasmus Sandin, you and I like Nick Jensen for those banger leagues, Joel Edmondson and Trevor Van Riemsdyk. Are they flashy? No, but that group is okay. And my final point here, everything you said about Darcy Kuemper, spot on. Odds and stats propped by such a good year with Colorado and an amazing Stanley Cup squad in front of him. But I want to say this, 916 save percentage in his career, 2.55 goals against in his career, and he's played for some really, really bad teams in Arizona. And no offense, but those early 2010s were not pretty for the Minnesota Wild that he was a part of. So the fact that he is 165, 121, and 43 with those numbers, he is a very underrated goaltender, just not in a good position, Steele. And fourth round, way too high. I'm saying 12th round, I'm going to be looking at Darcy Kuemper, maybe 10th at the earliest.
That fades a lot, and I think 12 might be pushing it a little bit, but I can agree. I think
12 is too far. You're right.
It's 9, a little 10. Bit far for a guy. Yeah, for a guy
he's still a number one.
He is still number one and struggled with a little bit of injury last year. Washington struggled with injuries overall. The entire season as well.
John Carlson back full time is going to be huge for that.
It's going to be huge for Washington. It's going to be huge for Darcy Kuemper, and it's going to be huge for the blue line, even the power play as well. So yeah, I think Alex Ovechkin and all those guys up front, they'll be happy to get John Carlson back fully healthy and ready to go for next season. We got so many more goaltenders to get to.
Yes, sir.
Frederik Andersen, Tristan Jarry, Jack Campbell, but we will be starting it back up with the boy out west in Edmonton, Evander Kane, who also suffered a very traumatic injury halfway through the season as well.
He did suffer a traumatic injury, but will help you keep out from injuries, is our next sponsor. AG1, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at AG1, the daily foundational nutritional supplement that supports whole body health. Steele and I have been drinking it every day, and we've been trying AG1 before and after the gym because it gives you that natural boost mentally and physically, and you don't need to be worrying about all those pills and supplements. AG1 is a foundational nutrient supplement that delivers comprehensive nutrients to support whole body health. It replaces your multivitamin, your probiotic, all in one simple drinkable habit. It's a science-driven formulation of vitamins, probiotics, and whole food source nutrients, raising the standard for quality in the supplement category. AG1 helps you build your health foundation first. You got to be checking out our friends from AG1. It's awesome before or after the gym. Steele and I have been taking it mostly because we hate all the pills and supplements. Don't worry about 100 different pills. You got to be checking out one scoop of AG1 every single day. It's a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplemental routine. You need to be trying AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/NHL network. That's drinkag1.com/NHL network. You got to be checking it out today.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your favorite team from all 4 major sports leagues, including the NCAA, your team every single day. Make sure you hit that subscribe, hit that follow button. We appreciate all that love and support you show us every single day. Monday through Friday, 7 o'clock in the morning is when you can find all of our episodes. And where you can find this player next season on the Edmonton Oilers, Evander Kane, going 46th overall in our draft. And I want to hear your opinion first on Evander Kane, because this is a very, very hot player fantasy-wise. He pretty much brings everything you can think of fantasy-wise. Banger leagues, banger league beauty. He brings the physicality. He's got power play touch to him as well. Obviously, he plays with the 2 best players in the world. Where do you think he falls next season?
Well, first of all, taking him this high just seems silly. Look, I get that you kind of almost have to catch lightning in a bottle with Evander Kane and get him at the right moment sometimes. And when he is on, he is on. But one of the things you and I mentioned, and, now it seems that the Stanley Cup playoffs were perhaps years ago, Steele, we mentioned one of these trends that affects fantasy hockey. Players that either overperform or underperform in the postseason, that's what you remember headed into draft season, and you forget that the playoffs usually don't actually count into your fantasy success. And don't get overly sold or undersold on players who maybe over or underperformed. And a year ago, Evander Kane scored 13 goals in 15 postseason games. So something tells me headed into this last year's draft, one of these GMs went, oh my goodness, Evander Kane led the league in postseason's goal scoring. I'm jumping all over him in the 4th round. Pause. Remember that playoffs and regular season, especially when it comes to fantasy, don't always correlate. So keep that in your cap when you're drafting players this year. Am I saying Evander Kane isn't valuable or draftable? 100% not. But the 4th round, way too high, and make sure you don't get over, glamified on what they've done in the postseason. So I'll say that, Steele. I hope you like that take. And number 2, how did you like my ad read on the AG1? Was it fire or not?
It was fire. It was clean. It was concise. And it was pure. I absolutely loved it. We love AG1 on this channel. What I don't love, I actually disagree with your take on Evander Kane here. I don't think it's crazy that he went 46th overall in our league. I actually was thinking about taking him in this 4th round with my pick. I decided I could probably wait for the 5th round. Unfortunately, he went right after a few picks after mine. But I think if he didn't get injured, this would be a completely different conversation. I think it would be a completely different story. He had 28 points in 41 games, so pretty much just double that. He finishes the season with 55 points, which he on average does pretty much every season. So this is my thing, because I do agree with you. Like, obviously, a little bit of a reach when you think about it in all aspects. But if we could potentially see a full 82 game season from Evander Kane, I seriously, and I'm confident when saying this, we could easily see him put up 60 to 65 points, 250 shots, 250 hits, and over 80 penalty minutes if he plays a full season. He plays
Yeah.
that type of game.
Well,
I don't think it's that far-fetched, and I don't think it's that
not
crazy.
far-fetched, but to say easily when he's never done that in his career, I don't think easily is the word. It's
But
not
he also
far-fetched.
hasn't played with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl for his entire career. He's only been playing with them for the last 2 seasons, and both those 2 seasons he's been injured, plus came in halfway through the year. So he's never had a full year with those 2 guys, and he had a very serious injury last year.
Good point, but also then maybe let's also then consider the caveat of the injuries, because he has been banged up, and maybe some of those have been freak accidents. The cut was really nothing.
He was out for 3 months with that.
Yeah, you could never predict a freak accident like that with a blade slash. So you're bringing me around here a little bit. Let's just also remember that his previous high was topping out at 57. So 60, 65, you're right. It's not a stretch. Also, the main thing with this guy, aside from all the things you just mentioned in peripherals, he gets to play with Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, and he brings those just by default. You got to go after him. 4th round maybe was a bit high for me. Again, though, here is the same old song and dance deal. What's your format? Our hits, our PIMs, our blocks, are all of those things counted? Because then, yes, he goes up the draft board 100%. Why don't we talk about, and now actually 3 goalies in a row with Mr. Freddie Andersen?
Freddie Andersen, yes, sir. Let's get to him right now. 45th overall in the Fantasy Hockey League. And this is where I think he went too high. I think Frederik Andersen went at 45th, went too high in this draft, and obviously for multiple reasons. Obviously, you factor in the injuries that he's had over the last few seasons. He's a great goaltender. He's one of the best in the league. Obviously, there's some younger goaltenders climbing up that leaderboard, but he put some impressive numbers up. But it doesn't really transfer over into the fantasy hockey world. Again, like Flip just said, it really depends on the league setting. But if we're speaking strictly on fantasy points, he's not the best and not one of the best, or even remotely close to one of the best in fantasy hockey leagues. Actually, last year, he was ranked 40th best at the end of the season. Well, he only played 34 games because he was injured. But he was ranked 40th best amongst goaltenders in last year's fantasy leagues. And this past year. The year prior to that, he played 52 games, and he just cracked the top 15 best goaltenders. So I think the difference now with Frederik Andersen is the difference between Carolina and Toronto is he doesn't face that many shots. And those shots, those saves continue to add up in fantasy points. So for me personally, the difference between, like Toronto would give up the most amount of points in the NHL when he was playing. And they probably still do at this point. Now that he's in Carolina, they give up a ton of shots. They do give up a ton of shots.
They were a lot better last year defensively.
Yes, they were a lot better. But when Frederik Andersen was on the team, they gave 100%. Up a ton of shots.
100%.
Now in Carolina, he's got better defensemen. I would fade Andersen to probably the 7th or 8th round.
And here's one of those cases, though, Steele, that, in my opinion, 4th round, a little bit too high. But let's look at those numbers after the season heading into this draft. 35 wins, 14 losses, and 3. He's 35, 14, and 3 with a .922 save percentage, and he almost led the league in goals against with 2.17, and he was 4th in Vezina voting. So digging into those numbers, I kind of understand why this GM reached a little bit. But when you also look at the makeup of what's coming in Carolina, when you know the injury history, and they have my boy Kochetkov, and they've also signed Ronta.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm comfortable actually investing too much in Freddie Andersen, because to me, there's almost 3 capable goalies in Carolina at taking that crease, whether it's Ronta or Kochetkov or Andersen. So to me, that means be careful of where you're taking Freddie. 4th round was too high, but I kind of get it considering how good he was the year before, Steele. Yeah. But you make really good points about those shot totals, and obviously those saves add up when you're playing those categorical leagues. We got 2 more goalies to talk about. Let's get to break, and let's get back to this because, Tristan Jarry, this is my pick on the board, and I want to talk about it.
Tristan Jarry and Jack Campbell, the last 2 players that we'll be talking about for this episode. We will get to them very, very, very soon. But first, this episode is also brought to you by our friends at Bird Dogs. I can't stress enough how comfy these shorts are. I'm wearing a pair every other day, constantly trying to grab more from Bird Dogs because they are so comfy. And they even make you look better too. I didn't think it was possible, but I am looking fresh and stylish walking down the street, walking on the golf course, walking to the restaurant in my Bird Dogs. They're built for comfort and for versatility. Bird Dogs give you the freedom to wear their pants for any type of occasion, a casual date with your partner, a physical activity like hiking, or even a day out on the golf course. Flip, I'll tell you what, I wore my Bird Dogs the other day to the golf course. I went out and shot 3 over, one of the best rounds of my career so far, my amateur career in the golf world. But I love these Bird Dogs, and the built-in liners are a game changer. They have a huge variety of styles and clothing, like khaki shorts, Oxford shorts, bathing suits, joggers, and even gym shorts, what I'm trying to get hands on more and more every time. They even use an anti-stink sweat working fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long, all summer long in fact. So go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL and enter promo code LockedOnNHL for a free Yeti-style tumbler with your order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL or promo code LockedOnNHL for a free Yeti-style tumbler. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off ever. We promise you that. And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. We appreciate all that love and support you show us out there. And look at that, the Yeti style tumbler from Bird Dogs. Here it is. Absolutely gorgeous.
Yes.
We love Bird Dogs. We love AG1. We love all of our sponsors out there. Thank you so much for tuning in every single day. Tristan Jarry, the next goaltender that comes up on this list. Was this your draft pick, Flip?
It was my draft pick, Steele, and I went a little goalie heavy. And this is where I'm so vibing your advice about holding back, because not only did it go off the rails for my squad, because for a lot of reasons, I left holes in my lineup by going for goalies that I really love their game, right? I think Tristan Jarry and Sorokin, they are two of the best in the business.
Yeah.
It doesn't always translate to fantasy success. Obviously, with Jarry last year, the injuries are a caveat. At times, though, with Jarry and Sorokin, I had the best tandem in our league, but that falls apart.
I think you did, actually.
Yeah, and that falls apart, though, when you also don't leave any backups in your forward lineup. So Tristan Jarry, Steele, to me, since taking the crease in 2019 for the lion's share, take these numbers in. 915 save percentage, 2.6 goals against, and a 103, 52, and 17 record. Those are almost elite numbers. And if not for, look, we've said what we've said about the Pittsburgh Penguins. They've been banged up. Chris Letang's been banged up. Malkin's been banged up. They've had some trades that haven't worked out, some signings, Granlund and others. The team's not exactly been super quality in front of him. And what I wanted to leave with this with Tristan Jarry, I am so fine having him as my first goalie off the board for my team. Do I mean he is the first goalie off the board? Absolutely not. But he is a solid goaltender who doesn't get enough respect. And if you dig into his numbers, aside from the injuries and maybe a couple of inconsistent back-to-backs, he is a really good goaltender.
See, I don't actually hate the fact that you took Jarry in the 4th round. I think what the problem was, because you drafted Ilya Sorokin in the 2nd round, right?
Go. That's the problem.
I think that's the problem. It's not the fact that you drafted a goaltender in the 2nd or 4th round, because I drafted Vasilevsky in the 1st round, and I ended up finishing 2nd in our fantasy league. I don't think that's the problem. I think it's that you drafted 2
I reeled
goaltenders.
off 2.
Yeah, you reeled off 2 in the first 4 rounds, which seems to be you did have the best tandem goaltender, but it didn't.
It was working for a period about 10 days.
It was. But these are both. Yeah, you're right. These are some of the hottest goaltenders. You know, Ilya Sorokin probably top 3 fantasy wise. Tristan Jarry probably top 10. Debatable if you really want to put him into the top 7, maybe. But I really like Tristan Jarry as well. I drafted him for my keeper dynasty fantasy league.
Love that.
I'm considering maybe keeping him depending on my forward core right now. But he's a phenomenal goaltender. And, he obviously had a very down season. He went from playing 58 games the year prior to 47 this past year. Obviously struggled with injuries. And I think people forget that he actually battled through a broken ankle in the playoffs 2 seasons ago as well. Right. So He struggled with a few variety of serious injuries for Tristan Jarry. However, a goaltender that hasn't really struggled with injuries, but has struggled with his confidence, Jack Campbell of the Edmonton Oilers, coming in at 43rd overall. And I'll make this real quick. I understand the thought process of drafting Jack Campbell at this time in the 4th round. You know, played 47 games the year prior with Toronto, had a 31-9-6 record with a 914 save percentage. You believe that that's going to transfer over when he joins the Edmonton Oilers on that $5 million 5-year contract. Obviously, it didn't. He still had a good record. He was 21-9-4, but by far the worst numbers of his career, an 888 save percentage with a 341 goals against average. It's not even comparable or close to the second worst year of his career.
And thank you for always being on point as my co-host. That's why I love doing this show with you. Right off the jump, what you said about Campbell is the main point. Confidence. It's between the ears for this man. We know when he's on his game, he is a number 1 goaltender, but you can't be on your game, Steele, 50 to 60% of the time when you're getting paid like a number 1 and you're getting played like a number 1. My man is just too soft. And I'm not going to come out here and attack anyone ever for having mental health problems. But what I will get at you for is when you're trying to hold down a number 1 position in professional sports and you're getting paid like a professional. You know what I'm saying here? That's why when actually, I don't know if you remember this, but last year the Edmonton Oilers had a little golf tourney in the offseason, and it was right after they got Campbell. And you could tell the whole squad had just been in with the PR staff because they spit out the same thing about Jack Campbell. We love having a number 1. We love having Jack here. He's going to hold us down. He's going to be our guy. It didn't work out like that, did it, Steele? Do I think he's not a solid number 2 option? I actually think he is. And let's remember, he was an 11th overall draft pick. Does that mean he should be played like one? No, but there were a lot of scouts who know a lot more about hockey than you or I who put him as a number 1 pick. Goaltenders don't often go in the first round. So he still holds a lot of value as a backup. He is still one of those top options because the Edmonton Oilers are so good. As a fill-in week to week, you got to be looking to him for wins, especially if, let's say, the Oilers play 4 games. Stuart Skinner is going to be the number 1 goalie in Edmonton, at least to the start of the year. But I'm with you. Way overreach on Campbell for the 4th round. I don't even see him as being draftable in most leagues this year, Steele, because I really do think Stuart Skinner, at least to start, is going to get a real shot to be that bona fide number 1.
I think it will be difficult after the year to find a place for him in fantasy hockey leagues because of what Stuart Skinner was able to accomplish in his rookie year and, be the goaltender in the playoffs.
Thank you.
I do think he is a starting goaltender in the NHL. I just think it's going to be difficult with Stuart Skinner now on the rise. But I understand the thought process from drafting him here. Going to Edmonton, you think he's going to be out even if he has a 905 save percentage, he's going to have a better record and play more games. You just don't
wins-wise, for sure.
It just didn't seem like anything Jack Campbell did last year was working, even though it looked like he was trying his absolute hardest to stop the puck. No matter what he did, it just seemed like the puck was getting by him almost on every other shot. So hopefully he has a bounce back year, and maybe he is one of those guys that falls in draft boards, maybe doesn't even get drafted. You're able to pick him up in the first few weeks, and he takes off from there. Who knows? But it will be difficult between Jack Campbell and Stuart Skinner. A lot of tandem goaltenders out there will be difficult to place. But that's what we do on the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, giving you all that advice and insight every single day. And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Make sure you're tuning in Monday through Friday, 7 o'clock in the morning is when you can find all of our episodes. Have a great day. Good luck with all your summer bets out there. And we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.